Maybe I should have warned you that I was going to preach on the first reading. Do you remember it? It just takes one line. Moses said he's going to raise up another prophet for you. Right? And in the Jewish Talmud, it recognizes 48 prophets, Hebrew prophets, prophets, masculine, and 7 prophetesses, women. Those are the prophets. Moses have to be your third: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. And then it goes on, argue who was last. Some say Malachi, some say someone else. But many, many prophets. And just something about that is, when I think of prophets and what they do, reminds me of when I first kind of told my family. My mom's side of the family is very large. I always joke, I have like 50 first cousins on my mom's side. I have one on the Rose side. My dad had one sister, she had one child. My mom has 7 siblings and, many children. But I was at a family event, and word was getting out that, and most of you know my story, right? I was in politics. I was a politician. So to go from politician to priesthood for many people is a chasm to be jumped. And I don't personally think it's that big of a deal. I think for me, they're both rooted in advocacy. What drew me to politics, elected office and working people, was advocacy, trying to get a system to work for people. And that's what draws me to religious life. Whether it's in education or foreign missions, it's advocating for people and letting them know of their value. Okay, then off my soapbox here for a second, but that's to me, they're not different. Anyway, I'm at this family event, and one of my family members, I think it was a wedding. I really don't remember. I just remember what they said. Arms crossed and said, "So, are you going to be a liberal priest or a conservative priest?" And just being a snarky enough politician, it really made me mad, and I just said, "I'm just going to love Jesus if that's okay with you." Because it isn't either or. If by the time I die and ascend, or you leave and move away, or you die and ascend, if you remember nothing else that I've ever said, it's that it's just not either or, it's always both and. And as you reflect back on all the prophets, not just the 55 of Hebrew Scripture, but everyone that we've had since, in every walk of life and of every religion. We could speak of Gandhi. We could speak of MLK. We could go on and on and on. The reality is, they didn't give a hoot about those kinds of distinctions. They're one driving force of all those Christian prophets, all the Hebrew prophets before them was, am I faithful to God? And do you know what? Those prophets, to the extent they were preaching old-timey religion, they sounded awfully conservative. And to the fact that they were constantly challenging the status quo, they sounded awfully liberal. And the one thing you can say about prophets is they comfort the disturbed and they disturb the comfortable. And when you disturb the comfortable, you get killed. Not always literally, sometimes, but at least figuratively, they come after you. When you disturb the comfortable. And that's the thing. You and I were baptized 3 things. Anyone remember this? Priest, prophet, king. I point this out a lot. I see a lot of Christ the King churches. We don't see, in fact, I don't know of a single one in this country. I used to be a national speaker. I've never been to Christ the Prophet church. We don't have it. You know why? Because we don't like it. It disturbs us. We are comfortable, and we are sometimes the disturbed as well. We have our pain. We have our struggle. We have our trauma. And it's both and. We need both. We need both, and we have to be both. Right in our baptism. So how are we prophetic? How do we share that with others? Well, here's the temptation that happens a lot of the time. As we work through our issues, as we work through what's going on in our community, in our country, in our world, as you kind of look at those concentric circles as they go out, there's something that often follows in that level of engagement. And it comes out initially, I think, as frustration. And sometimes, of course, it reaches the point of anger. And there's a righteous anger. You can look around the world and see what's not fair. We can see the situations in our world each and every day where you say, that's not fair, it's unjust, and God is the God of justice. But if we're going to be a prophet that both loves people and critiques them, I was going to say criticize, but I want to be careful, that we offer correction, then we better be doing that out of love. And it better be rooted in our experience of gratitude, not just the anger, because we know the difference. I've said many, many times, I don't know anyone, and I'll start with myself, that's ever been converted by someone yelling at them, by someone calling them names and telling them that they're wrong. I just don't know anyone that's converted that way. But I have been regularly converted by someone who came strongly at me, but I could see it in the experience, that it was rooted in their experience of gratitude, of a change of heart. Not out of anger. Anger is such a driving emotion for us. It goes to the root of who we are. It's why we've survived as a species, right? The fight or flight instinct. It's rooted so deep in us. But if we're going to be people of Jesus Christ, then we have to be seeking the unitive consciousness. Russell Moore, of evangelical Christian fame, he wrote a book called Losing Our Religion. And he talked about, because when you bring up anger, Christians love to quote which story? I'm a teacher, I'll wait all day. Huh? What? Oh, flipping the table, cleansing the temple, right? Something Jesus did once, and we quote it like he did it on Thursday of every week. Like he just went down the temple and threw everything around. Russell said in his book, and he was critiquing his tribe, evangelical Christians, but he said, when an evangelical Christian quotes the cleansing of the temple, it's best to slowly back out of the room. Francis de Sales once said, never was there a man who thought his anger unjust. Never. But it just can't take us where we want to go. And I'm as guilty as any, I joke a lot about my anger around traffic. This just happened to me yesterday. Intersection over there by UT, and I'm trying to turn right to head up to St. Francis. And there's a no turn on red sign. But that's from back when the train trestle was still there, and there was a huge berm. Well, now it's gone, and in my estimation, I can turn right because I can see. So there's a pedestrian on the other side, and as I start to turn right, he goes, points up at the sign. Gets better. As I go past him, he jaywalks. Don't tell me about my sin, sir. As you're sinning right behind me. I really wanted to stop, and go, do you know why that's, oh gosh, right? I mean, it's so stupid. It's a silly example. When we talk about real examples, what's going on in our world, what's going on in our church, things that are deeply rooted. But we have to be able to, because we've now discussed the problem. What's the solution? And it's people that return themselves to prayer and that they sit with God and they let God do some things for them. And one is to massage our heart to help us kind of cool off from that. I know when I come back from mission experiences, there's a little anger in me. When you've seen how some people are forced to struggle each and every day. I remember when I studied in Bolivia, I was there for 3 months. And as we were leaving, they actually had a session to prepare us for returning to the first world. And I thought it was a little dumb. Of course, I had been doing mission work for a while. I get it. But I wasn't prepared for having spent so much time with so many people in that space. I remember standing in a Myers and literally, I'll PG it for you, but I'm standing there looking at salsa. And I was just like, why are there so many flippin' salsas? It was disturbing to see this 85 different kinds of salsa. It isn't fair. But what I want is the experience of gratitude to drive my decision for the next things that I do, not the anger. Anger is not a value in that sense, right? Righteous anger can take us somewhere. But it's the goodness, it's the love. We have to be a full prophet, in the words of Father Richard Rohr, a full prophet which loves people and can correct in the space, but rooted in gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And so we return to say, I'm going to be a person of prayer. Hear the voice of God say, just calm down. It is working on my time, as MLK said, right? That this thrust towards justice, it can take a long time, but it bends towards it. I just slaughtered that quote, I know, but you know what I'm talking about, right? We have to let God be in His time. He has to massage our heart, or as the Psalm said, harden not your hearts. When you hear His voice, don't let your heart become hard. Let us be people of prayer. Let us be people that can sit and hold the tension of the moment and draw on our experiences of gratitude. It's the only way things can change. It's the only way. If it worked through violence, it would have worked by now. If it worked through yelling, if it had worked through writing papers or encyclicals from the Pope or from the church, it would have worked by now. It's always going to come back to our own heart. It's always going to come back to our individual conversion. And when God puts on our heart to be prophetic, it better be rooted in the experience of gratitude, not just our anger at the unjustness, because the world's always going to have that. It is. And we're going to receive the real presence of someone who was treated very unjustly, who in his prophetic role, people ultimately said, shut him up. The challenge that he laid out in front of people, rather than be accepted, was silenced. And it's his presence that will strengthen us today and tomorrow and each and every day we have. Because on that day, love won. Today, love wins. And forever, forever and ever, love will win. But we've got to claim that right at the heart level first. We have heard his voice today. Let us not harden our hearts. May God be praised.